Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking NuScale power. It is time for another update, and on this chart we are tracking a larger double 1-2-1-2 setup to be formed, where after this wave 2 is complete we are looking for a third wave to the upside to be emerging. Now, since in the broader market sentiment we don't necessarily recognize similar patterns, we need to be aware that even though we may form additional highs, it may not be within the actual wave 3 to the upside. Yeah, other patterns could work out on this chart, and I was going through them in the previous video. Yeah, this could form a larger 1, 2, 3, 4th and the 5th to the upside as part of a larger leading diagonal, where then we should be prepared still for a larger correction. Another scenario could actually allow even a completion of this pattern already within a larger wave 1, and would already force us basically to start looking for a deeper retracement. Although even in this interpretation I would highly prefer still a reversal, a relief rally to the upside, even though it wouldn't form an additional new all-time high. Now again, this is more in relation with the broader market sentiment, because on this chart there is nothing too bearish going on just yet. We don't even have here a 5-wave move to the downside, although based on the current structure, yeah, it seems rather likely than not that we will build such a pattern. And as I was mentioning in many of the previous videos, and actually ever since we had formed here this actual top, we were prepared for a potential reversal into this area of support, where we would have actually expected a 5-wave move to the downside to be forming. Yeah, we were looking here for what we have in the orange interpretation: an A wave down, a B wave up, and a C wave to the downside, in which case we would actually want to see this wave 5 complete and then form a bottom, quite possibly here perfectly at the end of the area of support at the 78.6% retracement at the $15.6 level. Although I want to make it clear, this area is not a prediction zone where I guarantee, or that anyone can guarantee, we will see a reversal, but it is an area that allows us to look for a higher probability and good risk-reward ratio reversal potential that would allow us to at least capture some value from this overall trend. Where definitely here, if we break below the 78.6% retracement, it would be a signal to us that we should be watching out for even further extension and the general failure of this larger setup. But even if we form here the 5-wave move to the downside, it would signal a likely complete structure where we would expect to see a larger correction, quite possibly in a 3-wave pattern into a larger area of resistance. And if we are to look for such a potential area right now, yeah, we can actually assume that, let's say we bottom perfectly at the 78.6% retracement, the area of resistance would really start here at the $25.6 level. Yeah, already some value is possible to be captured even in a bearish interpretation that would expect here a potential larger 1-2 setup or an AB setup, because it is expected, it is rather likely than not, that we will head back into such a resistance area once we build such a movement to the downside. Now, to get into the smaller time frame, and yeah, actually I want one more thing to mention in this area. It is still possible for us to have already bottomed within the blue interpretation, and even though we have a very ugly and weak structure that we are tracking right now to the upside, it is still possible to form this as a larger wave 1 and have a larger diagonal pattern to be forming within this area, where in the previous video we were watching, however, this area of resistance for continuation lower in a 5th wave in the orange scenario, but we also had this path, this plan for a potential initial leading diagonal to the upside, and I had provided you this area of support to track such an idea, such a wave 4 correction and the 5th wave to form the larger structure. And clearly there was a fight going on. There were some attempts to actually create this reversal. Yeah, we see the reactions here in this area of support, and also perfectly here at the 61.8% retracement before the eventual failure. And I didn't even provide you this area for a trade setup. Yeah, we would have needed to form here the 5th wave to have a potential larger wave 1 to the upside and look for a potential trade setup in a wave 2. But this was a path, a roadmap to be tracking for the potential structure that we would have liked to see to the upside. Again, there was a chance, there was an attempt to form such a pattern, but there wasn't enough strength in the end. And with that said, we can now remove here this interpretation in white. And what I'm basically tracking here in the 5th wave in orange is an ABC structure to be formed to the downside. Now, there are a couple of patterns in which we could build such a movement, but both of them would expect to build an ABC structure because, again, we are tracking an overall ending diagonal within this wave C in orange. This is clearly an ABC structure in the wave 1, we have an ABC structure in wave 2, and we are tracking here an ABC structure in the wave 3, where again, we are looking for an ABC structure in the 5th wave to the downside. Now, my preferred scenario would likely include the idea of an A wave down here, a B wave up, and now a C wave to be formed to the downside. It is possible to have the A wave bottom here and then have the B wave top here, and from this point on to be tracking another ending diagonal within the wave C, but I would probably prefer the first mentioned interpretation where, yeah, this would be the B wave top and we are now tracking an internal wave C to the downside, where likely we had already formed the initial wave 1 down. Yeah, we have here the wave 1, the wave 2 potentially already topped, since we are actually in the territory of forming new lows and the momentum seems to be accelerating at this point, and we are looking for a 5-wave structure in the end. Now, we can actually even go ahead and look for a potential area of resistance in case this wave 2 has not topped just yet. It is not necessary. And we can notice that we have pushed here perfectly into the 38.2% retracement before continuing in this downtrend in a potential wave 3. Now, we can even look here internally for some ideal targets, and for the wave C, we would be eyeing here the 100% extension of the wave A, although that would be way too short to have a full wave C within this area unless there is some internal 1, 2, 3, and then this is the 4th instead, and the 5th wave that is forming right now, and in that case we would likely not even get to the 100% extension. But as I tell you every single time, we don't need to get to the 100% extension and we don't need to stop there. So this wave C does still have some ways, some paths it could be taking while building a reliable structure, a structure that could make sense. So what I would most focus on here is the potential 1-2 setup that we are tracking internally within the wave C, and I would be eyeing that ideal target, the ideal target for the wave 3 here, which is the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, and that is around the $16.2 level. Now, if we get to those levels within the wave 3, it would actually kind of line up with forming a 4th and a 5th that could easily head into the last level of support of the larger support zone, yeah, the larger support area in white. And again, it is not a problem if we get a brief break below it. I tell you every single time we need a sustained break for a signal that this structure is not going to work, and yeah, it would need to be a sustained break from a larger time frame perspective, yeah, at least something like here on the daily. If we get just something like a week below it, this is no problem, although yeah, if we see a sustained break and we trend in this area for a while, even if we return back to the upside into a potential area of resistance, I would be very cautious of actually looking for additional highs. I would be prepared in such a scenario for this larger 5-wave move to the downside to either be a wave A or a larger wave 1, and yeah, in that case, the top of this pattern would have been at this point, the actual all-time high. Now, with that said, right now there isn't much else to be covering. It is rather likely than not that we will be building here another wave to the downside to be building this wave 5 in orange. Although, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it is not impossible for this to still continue higher. We can even look for such an area of support, although again, this is a very low probability interpretation to be tracking a potential direct movement to the upside in this area. And it is not a trade setup. Yeah, clearly we are not looking for potential positions in this area. We are always waiting for a more reliable structure, and that would be an initial 5-wave move to the upside for a potential larger 1-2 setup. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.